are moments where we behave in ways that we don't feel as proud. Perhaps we feel a little bit ashamed. And then we try to hide, or we try to avoid certain things because we don't want the judgment of people, perceived judgment of people. And sometimes we do not engage in activities and things because we don't want to be judged or criticized or ridiculed. And then we end up isolating ourselves a little further, a little more than necessary. And sometimes we don't see our value and worth because we are so obsessively focusing on the negatives, on the things that are going bad and wrong and the mistakes we make, and we fail to see our goodness and our value and our good. And the result of that, we don't approach things and people and activities that perhaps would be good for us, perhaps would give us another opportunity to connect with another human being, that perhaps would give something to us and others. So in the interests of that, let's have a little reminder. When we are feeling self-conscious, when we're feeling like a failure, when we're feeling that we're not good enough, when we're feeling that we are terrible, when we're feeling that we can't get anything right, let's remind ourselves as a mantra, as a repetition, and perhaps as a way of encouraging ourselves to approach someone, to talk with someone, as a way of socializing or making friends, new friendships, as a way to have encouraged to go somewhere or do something. And that repetition could be some words such as, I have value, I have worth. All human beings have value and worth, and often we fail to see that in ourselves and others because we are focusing on the negatives while discounting the positives, because we are focusing on the things that are not going well instead of focusing on the things that are going well. All human beings have worth and value in this world, all of them. We might be distracted, we might be engaging in behaviors that not serve us because we don't know, because we don't have the knowledge, because we have too much suffering. But we can learn better ways. We can learn better ways of behaving, of acting, of responding, ways that support us and uplift us and brings the best in us and others in the circumstances. So we can do, and we have worth and value. So let's repeat that to ourselves. I have worth. I have value. And even if you want, you can have a little singing. I have worth. I have value. I have worth. I have value. At times we might not believe those words, perhaps because we did come from a background, or we were raised, or we lived a life where others only judge us and criticize and put us down, and fail to see our worth and recognize our goodness. And then we never learned to see the goodness and worth in ourselves because we relied on others, on the validation and approval of others. And if we had encounters from others where they were judgmental and critical and put us down, and only saw the bad in ourselves, the bad mistakes we made, the bad behaviors we had instead of our goodness, they never comment or observe the good in us. We might believe, based on their observations, or perhaps because we failed at something, we might believe that we have no worth, no value. And that's not true. All human beings have worth and value. So let's go back to that repetition. I have worth. I have value. And it's just repeating as many times as it needed until we start believing. We might not know in what ways we are valuable, in what ways we have worth. We might not know. But when you look at, say, pig, compared to an animal or plant, they all have worth and value in different ways, but they all have worth and value, and so is human beings. And we are human beings. So breathe in. I have worth. I have value. I have worth. I have value. Just repeat with me. Breathe in. I have worth. I have value. I have worth. I have value. And sometimes we believe that we are only lovable or liked if we have certain characteristics. There must be the most beautiful, the most intelligent, the most loving, the most caring, the most smart or intelligent, or have certain physical or mental attributes. And we think we can only be liked or lovable if we behave in certain ways. And usually those ways are high marks and high standards that society impose on us, that we impose, that others impose on us. We're only likable if we behave in a certain way that is deemed appropriate by someone else's. So, those bars are often not realistic. It's often imposed by others, and they don't come from a place of good. They come from a place of demanding. So, in order to be liked, to be loved, everyone is liked and loved. There's always the behavior that we liked and love in people. It's all behaviors. It's all behaviors that we might prefer, like or don't like. But then let's just, instead of thinking that we are unworthy, unlovable, unliked, which is a very hurtful place to be, let's look at it as in, what's the chances that I'm totally unlovable and totally unlikable? What is the chances of that? Or on the other light, not everyone is liked by everyone at all the times. Not everyone is loved by everyone all the times. Think about Jesus. He was not even loved, or Mother Teresa, not even liked by everyone all the times. So no one is ever liked and loved by everyone all the times, because often we focus on behaviors. But we're loved enough, we're likable enough. And then we might have this perception, I need to be smart to be liked and loved and accepted. But we can be smart enough, and that's good enough. Yes, we can keep on improving, but our worth and value does not need to depend on it. We all have different skills and different abilities, and it's good because then we all can contribute to ourselves and the world in different ways. And our world can be just our small world, ourselves and the people that we have dealings with on a daily basis. Let's remind ourselves that we are worthy. I am worthy. I am good enough. And often that approval comes from someone telling us, you are good, you're a good person. And then we can affirm, I am good enough. I've got some behaviors that I'm proud of, behaviors I'm not so proud of, behaviors that I want to maintain, behaviors that I want to improve. But I am good enough. And then we could be like, attractive. Yes, attractive people do attract and can be beautiful to look at. But just because we might not meet that mark and that threshold doesn't mean that we're not beautiful enough, attractive enough. And often it's more about the energy than the physical characteristics. And often it's more about the compatibility with another human being. The compatibility in terms of values, preferences, interests, rather than something being unlovable. And often someone else might not want a specific person because of their behaviors and preferences in life, and someone else's will be so delighted. And the same for us, just because we might not be someone else's cup of tea and someone else might not be our cup of tea does not mean that we're not likable. it's just a match of preferences in a moment in time. And sometimes at one point in our life we might see something as beautiful in a certain form, and then later on we might see something as being beautiful in a different form. And sometimes we might have one need, and another time we might have a different need. See, that's change, just a match. So let's affirm, I am beautiful enough. Even when I'm scruffy. Especially when I'm scruffy. Denial, denial, denial. No, I do some videos where I'm scruffy, and it's intentional because I'm scruffy most of the time. But equally, I do not wish to portray an image that I'm not, and two, an image of perfection. Because if you see me on a daily basis, you'd see my good, my bad, my light, my darkness, my tidiness, my scruffiness. And I don't want to put something out there that is not realistic, doesn't embrace the good and the parts of ourselves that we're not so proud of or comfortable with. And equal, I don't want to contribute to a society where they only show the best parts of themselves up there, thinking that life is perfect. And no, we all struggle, we all suffer, and we all have things we're not so proud of. And there are, yes, some people criticize and reject my scruffiness. That's okay. That's okay. Okay, I might choose to be scruffy because I might be struggling with my energy levels, because it might be my priorities, but it might be because I don't care, because I value something else instead. It might be because I want to embrace my good days and my bad days. And someone else's might value being tidy all of the time. If that's a value for them, that's good. I like to have the value of flexibility, of choosing how I'd like to be in the moment and be okay. Some days tidy up, some days a mess. So let's go with our affirmation. I am good enough. I am lovable enough, likable enough, valuable enough, smart enough, intelligent enough, good enough. Whatever it is that we consider to be of value, it's enough. We don't need to have this high. Yes, we can work towards them, and it's good to work and improve. But if we're not going to beat ourselves up. Otherwise we feel like a misery, and we feel miserable. And put yourself out there, because you never know what you have to offer. Might not be for the liking and taste of everyone. That is true. It might be rejected and criticized and ridiculed. That's true. But also there's a possibility that there's someone out there that is looking for exactly what you have to offer. And then we all have different paths that we want and can and choose to pursue and have choice and availability. But all things that we do have a value and a purpose. All jobs have a value and purpose. It might be a value of providing, of paying the bills, of supporting us in some way, or supporting others in some way. Sometimes we do things that is so helpful for someone else. For instance, I'm not very good in maps, reading maps and finding my way. So when my husband drives to a place or finds a way, that's valuable to me, because then I get to explore places and I get to see and enjoy activities and things that perhaps I would not do it on my own. Or when he goes shopping, that's valuable to me, because then it saves me the time and the energy from going shopping. perhaps when I cook, that's valuable for me, my son, and my husband, because I'm saving them the time and I'm creating a meal. So whatever it is that you do, there's value and is worth. It's worthy to you and it's worthy for someone else's. And we are in our little world. We don't need to think about the big world at large, just our little world. We do things that we take for granted, that we don't realize the worth and the value it has for ourselves and others. We take others for granted and we don't see the worth and the value they have in our lives. Perhaps in terms of practical help, perhaps in terms of love and affection, perhaps in terms of gifts or making our life more comfortable. Let's not take for granted others and ourselves. So, I have worth. Cheers. Hydrate. I have value. I have worth. I have value. I'd like to. We might go on this journey of discovery to see our worth and value. But just step forward with the intention that you have worth and value until you find it, until you start seeing proof of it, until you start seeing glimpses of your worth and value, so you can build on that conviction. I have worth, I have value. I have worth, I have value. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, intelligent enough. Beautiful enough. Okay, let's not beat ourselves down, because it's a terrible place to be and to feel. And then makes us feel more rejected unnecessarily. Often we are rejecting ourselves. Someone might reject us. And that is one way that rejection doesn't feel good. But there is another way which is even more painful, is when we reject ourselves. Someone might reject because we're not their preferred option or choice. And that's okay. We can learn to accept that. We can learn to see it is not their cup of tea in this moment in time, and accept that. The way that we don't like things being imposed and forced on us, we like to have the choice. But see that we have worth and value. We are good enough, beautiful enough, lovable enough, smart enough, intelligent enough. And we are choosing not to reject ourselves. Someone else's might reject ourselves for whatever criteria there may be in terms of relationship or work or friendships or activity. But we can still choose to embrace ourselves, to accept ourselves, to like ourselves, to love ourselves. We don't need to reject ourselves. And it's often when we reject ourselves, when we make it mean that we are a total unlovable person, that we are totally flawless, that we're terrible. It's us that is creating the unnecessary suffering, because we are failing to see the goodness in ourselves, the value and the worth in ourselves. We are at the mercy of others, and that only creates a life of suffering and misery. We can choose, while we have breath in our lungs and we are alive and our heart is ticking, we can choose to continue, like ourselves, love ourselves a little more, even if it is difficult, even if we are not proud of our moments and our behaviors. But we can learn to forgive ourselves. We can learn to accept our faults and negativities and lacks and inability. We can learn to accept, we can learn to do differently. We can be patient while we learn. We can choose to love ourselves despite, even though we might get it wrong, even though we do something we don't want to. can choose to label ourselves based on our behaviors rather than the whole person. Instead of labeling ourselves like a terrible person because we've done a terrible thing, why don't you say, why don't we label the behavior? I've done, or this behavior was terrible. I'm not proud of it. I've done it because of these reasons. What I've learned was these, and in the future I'll do differently. So we are rating the behavior rather than the person. And the same, pardon me, for others. We are rating the behavior. There are behaviors that are helpful, unhelpful, good and bad. But we're leaving the person intact. So we can see the goodness in ourselves and others. Because that's the more accurate way of viewing ourselves, our true value, our goodness, and the same in others. I have worth, I have value, and so do you. I need more water. Not enough water, I'm out of water. Okay, I have worth, I have value, and so do you. I'm good enough, and so are you. Just repeat with me. I'm good enough, lovable enough, smart enough, intelligent enough, beautiful enough, good enough, kind enough. Whatever is the values that you want to live by or think that is considered to be important. Breathe in, breathe out. And when you come from that premise of being good enough, having value and worth, and being liked enough and lovable enough, then you show up differently. Then that helps have the courage to approach others, to speak up kindly. And then if our efforts fail, we can learn from them and try differently. And we can try again and just go with, there is someone out there that is looking for this, even if that someone is me. So you are in line with the behaviors you want to have in your life, with the life you want to live, the skills you want to have, the values you want to have. And someone else's might reject us, me, you. But ultimately we choose if we reject ourselves or not. And are you going to vow to never reject ourselves, even if we don't feel good, even if we're not proud of our behaviors? We choose to stand by ourselves forevermore, to learn from our mistakes, to forgive ourselves, to stand up when we can, and try differently from our learned experiences, because we are good enough, lovable enough, worthy enough, likable enough, lovable enough. We are enough. And enough of this video! I like being silly. Don't beat yourself up if you're not at the mark that society considers to be beautiful. Okay? Because to me you are beautiful enough. Unless you behave ugly, and then I'll think differently. But I'm also learning, and I'm learning to judge a behavior and not the person as a whole. We all on this journey of learning. Pray for now. You're beautiful! Sometimes we do feel genuinely beautiful, don't we? And often it's when we feel better. Remember that. Do everything you can to feel better. Because when we feel better, then we see more beauty and we feel more beautiful. And it's not a competition. It's just, if we feel better, then we show up better. And we get the best out of ourselves and others. Okay? Bye for now.